Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good any moment of the day, no matter where you join from. Hi, my name is Ingmar. I'm a product manager at Infoblox for NetMRI Network Insight. And today in the technical webinar, we'll be talking about NetMRI and topology maps. The agenda, we have a 1 hour runtime. I'll talk a bit about the business drivers and the features that are in the product, mainly the topology tool. So first, the NetMRI business drivers. The reason why NetMRI, aside from the rhyme, of course. So NetMRI business drivers, the first one is to enforce compliance. If you're running a network, you want to make sure that you audit your network and you enforce compliance standards. And doing so gives you vulnerability protection. Then we have service deployments. You want to automate device provisioning, you want to automate service provisioning, and you want to automate mass changes. Frequently in these contexts, you can ask yourself the question, if you had to change the NTP server in your entire company, how long would it take to do that on each and every device or in your entire infrastructure, the aggregate time of it? And if you could find a better way or an automated way to do so, how much time would it save you? And then we're talking about service availability. You run a network, and of course, you want that network to be up. So you want to ensure network uptime, and you want, in order to do that, visibility and inventory of your network. And then you want to reduce cost. You don't want dependence on highly paid specialists that spend a lot of their time doing manual tasks, right? You want to multiply the power of you or for the people on your team that are running this product. And so NetMRI has a feature set that consists of configuration analysis, network auto discovery, IPAM sync, switch port management, change management, change and config automation, policy and compliance management, and reporting. Now, it looks like colors all over the place here, but they'll be relevant later when we reuse them in the sections. As part of the follow-up to this webinar, you will also get a copy of this deck. So if you want to refer to that later, that's always useful. So the first part is network auto discovery. What is network auto discovery? Network auto discovery means that you put NetMRI in your environment, you give it credentials, and we will discover your devices and endpoints. Now, we also do that for multi-vendors. So it's very easy to just put NetMRI in there and discover each and every vendor that you have in your topology, which of course is a unique feature about NetMRI. We're actually the leader globally in how many devices and vendors we support out of the box. Now, what do we discover? We discover layer 2 physical and layer 3 logical data. We give you topology view, and we support traditional as well as VRF models. Any questions on this are always welcome. Happy to entertain them. Now, for our device support, here's a quick overview. So we support over 68 different vendors. We support 12 different device types and 300 models. So this is a really wide range of devices. Plus, we have a well-defined process. We have a well-defined process to add entries to this. So if you have a network device that is not supported, then we can capture the data, create a wrapper that basically interprets that data, and then work with that data moving forward. And we're generous. We will actually take that data and we will include it in the next patch release. So we're not charging people to do this. We are building up that library of supported products, supported vendors, and we want to keep that growing. A big aspect to this is also that we sync with our DDI solution. So if you are having a DDI environment, a NIOS environment with Infoblox, then you can sync your NetMRI discovered data with your IPAM data. So now on a DTP level or on a host level, you will see that this lease is owned by this peer, and it is attached to this switch. It's on this VLAN. We integrate with IPAM. We auto-create the networks that we discover, so you don't need to manually do that. We sync device details. You can see in the maps that there's correlation between all the different data sets, and we have the ability to use smart folders. If you're familiar with Niles, you might recognize this. If not, at least we have a very solid integration of NetMRI data with our DDI tool. And this is completely automated. You provide NetMRI a couple of credentials, and you're good to go. Third leg of it is switch port management. So NetMRI has the ability to do switch port management in your environment. You track available and unused ports, you track switches. You can also provision switch ports. So you can say that, oh, this port over here, right click down or move it to this VLAN. This allows you to do capacity planning and management, track your end hosts that are connected, and NetMRI also has a historic view on this data. So the benefit to it is that by having that historical overview, you can do forensics. You can say that, well, we saw something bad happen from the client with this MAC address. Which VLANs has this client been connected to over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks? And you can get the data out of there. And having switch port management capabilities allows us to remediate rogue and compromised endpoints. On top of that, we have a mobile app. So switch port management is nice from your web browser, but it's much nicer from your mobile phone or from a tablet. So when you go into the data center and you are making modifications there because you're switching out some interfaces or you're recabling something, then you can straight away from this place change the switch ports from your phone or a tablet. One note that I got here is, how do we handle discovery of medical devices on the network? We can discover anything. So as long as it talks SNMP, we can gather the data. If it has a CLI, we can extract more data. So it's all dependent on that. Now, we even have a workaround if you don't have a CLI to it. And there is a config file that just exists somewhere that through the API, we can update the config file of a device. So there are multiple ways of dealing with discovery of data, discovery of devices, and we will leverage all the means necessary to get to that data. Next, we're going to talk a bit about change management. So NetMRI is an NCCM tool, Network Change and Configuration Management tool. NetMRI is capable of doing automatic change detection. As part of the discovery, as part of the data that we ingest, we will see which changes are being made. And so you see in the lower corner, we can compare config files. We can compare between versions of the same machine. So we can say, well, something went wrong. What that last change, what was different in the config between this device now and the previous known config? And so you check them and you say diff or differentiate them, and you get that nice view next to each other, which is, well, these lines were added, these lines were removed. Now we do automatic change detection because whenever we poll a device, we see its config and we can see if it's different from the last time, but we can do better than that. If you send the relevant syslog lines or events from your network devices to NetMRI, we will parse out if changes are being made and by whom changes are being made. So this is an absolutely beautiful feature because now you can check exactly who is making changes where. You have an audit trail that gives you such deep insight into what devices are seeing most changes, who is making most changes, and what types of changes are they making. Now, again, looking back, we have historical data. NetMRI is strongly focused on having that historical configuration data and giving you auditing capabilities. So you can look back in time and you can say, well, I know we provisioned that switch 2 years ago. What was its initial config and what has changed ever since? So it's very easy to just go in, select a device and 2 versions of the config and differentiate them. And we can also differentiate between different devices. So we can differentiate, or we can diff the config of switch 1 and switch 2, and we can see where they're different. This, for example, is relevant if you're setting up certain synchronizations or VPN where the keys have to match. So again, very powerful change management that you have at your fingertips. And you can do a configuration search. We check all these configs into a repository, and so you can do a search and get wherever something is configured. to come back to the example that I was using before, the search NTP. Now, you have a glorious new NTP server, and you want to know who has the old NTP server configured. Well, if you do a search for the config statement for that NTP server, then you will get a list with all the devices that have that config statement included in them. Just a second. Unexpected cough there. Now, after the change detection, we can also do change automation. And so we do that by having embedded jobs and scripts. And NetMRI out of the box comes with a number of useful scripts, but we also have a community that allows people to leverage their peers. And so you can talk about scripts and jobs that you want to leverage or that you want to use for certain tasks. We have access to templates, and these templates allow you to spin up a standard config or a standard snippet. So good usage for templates would be should there be a screen visible? I'm getting here that it's maybe not visible. I think it should be shared. We have templates, and with templates, you create either a golden config, right, your golden standard for a newly specified device, or if you're just seeing the avatar, switch between the windows. There should be maybe up to 3 windows launched by Zoom that calls that. You should definitely be seeing a screen, and I've got some other people that are seeing it. So with templates, you have a golden config that you can use, or you can use snippets. For example, when you're referring to an ACL, that way you can maintain an ACL as a config snippet in a single location. And then we have the full scripting engine. So there's 3 types of scripts that we support. It's CCS, and CCS is really it's a proprietary language, but it's super simple. It's kind of similar to a wrapper to an expect script, if you're familiar with that. You send a command, you get something back, you parse that out, you do something more. But we also support Perl and Python natively on the appliance if you want to do more. Then we have variable-based jobs, so we can leverage the variables from the appliance or from the data set in your scripts. So you can say that I want to parse the system name or the version inside my scripts. And then all of that is still covered, and everything else in the UI as well, by user-based access control. So we have role-based access control that allow you to specify, hey, this person can make the following changes here, that person can make the following changes there. That's easy. But we also have an approval workflow. So we can say, for example, that if you write a script, you can make certain modifications, but you can set a policy that every script has to be approved by somebody else. So you always have 4 eyes on it. And then we have scheduled and triggered jobs. So scheduled is easy. At a certain moment in time, do this. But triggered jobs are conditional, and they can be triggered by some of the other features that we see in the future. For example, policies or issues. So going further is policy and compliance management. And this is really where NetMRI stands out from the competition. We have an embedded rule engine, and we have best practices, and we have templates in there that allow us to validate your configuration for compliance. You have ability to do multiple policies. You can have and you can have proactive detection. So what it does is it will evaluate your config if it matches a certain rule set that you have created. And that is very useful if you're in a field where, for example, PCI is required. This can take away a lot of the overhead of PCI compliance for your audits. If you imagine or if you relive your last PCI audit, it will definitely cost you a lot of work. So a PCI audit is usually very heavy in like, oh, we need to gather all the resources because the auditors are here, and we need to follow up and get all the data and do a lot of work. And then after the audit, you're left with a lot of work to follow up. Now, with policy and compliance management, you have your compliance encoded in your policies. So any change that happens that violates these policies will get triggered as being out of compliance and alerting you to it. Now, you have multiple remediation options because you can either manually fix it. So you just get an alert, right? Hey, this is somebody removed the banner from this device. Or you can leverage the automation part that I covered before. And in the automation part, as I said, we have the ability to automatically remediate. So we have, for example, a policy that says, I'm not seeing the banner statement. And then I follow that up with a triggered automation task that configures the banner onto those devices. So that's the multiple options that are available. And we have that for current data and for historical data. So adding on top of that is we have subscription services. So NetMRI right now has two subscription services. We have the Advisor, which gives you up-to-date information about P-certs and about end-of-life, end-of-sale announcements. And we have a policy service, if you're interested in this, a stick policy updates, where we publish updated policies as they are released. And so this allows you to stay compliant with those requirements per your business needs. Now, how do we ensure that devices are matching? Well, so first we need to do discovery. Then we need to identify the advisories. We cross-reference them by device OS. We identify them, and then it's up to you to remediate. And NetMRI plays a picture in this entire cycle because we discover what you out there. You have the subscription, so you get the advisories sent over to you. We will cross-reference them with the devices you have in your network, and we will flag which devices in your network are currently at risk. And then to remediate, we can have an update. Now, to upgrade, you can leverage the automation scripts, and it's very easy to just use the upgrade scripts to just push upgrades in an automated way to your devices on a large scale. So this is what you would see. You would have the P-cert vulnerability view. You could look at your infrastructure and your device groups. And then for your device group, you would see something that says, well, this P-cert currently is valid on the following list of devices. We also perform configuration analysis, and that is the pre-packaged expertise of Infoblox. So what we have there is a number of issues that we look for that are known issues, right? This stems back from the origin of the product. NetMRI started as the concept of a network engineer in a box. And so we will look for existing conditions or for stuff that you might not have picked up. We've seen a fair amount of customers who, after deploying NetMRI, all of a sudden find out that there's a bunch of fans on equipment that are currently not running anymore and that they were never alerted about. So we identify common misconfiguration, and we have the ability to do alerting based on these events. And then we give you remediation options. We understand your network, and by doing configuration analysis and by doing neighbor analysis, that's the way we draw this topology, which you see in there and which we'll definitely cover more in the demo. Based on all that information, we can give you a network scorecard. So you get a single number that represents the health of your network. And by leveraging that value, you can have an indication of where your network is at. And if it's going the right way or the wrong way. Plus, it's a very easy way to express to your management, like, look, this is the score, this is today's score, this was yesterday's score, or we want to be there this much time from now. And then to tie it all in, we have, of course, Outlook crashing, which is an amazing feature of the product. So let me fire that up again so we can talk a tiny bit more about the reporting engine. Well, we didn't need Outlook. That was muscle memory going too fast. But we do need some PowerPoint. And so here we go. Sorry for that. But we have a powerful reporting engine. And if we now switch between displays, we're even in a better shape. So we have single-click compliance reports. All the data that you have seen in the product is available through the reporting. And so they're pre-packaged, they're customizable. So if you like what you see, use what you see. If not, you can create your own. There's a lot of filtering there. We have them at different levels, so we can have summary reports that just say like, well, something like a one-digit score. This is how you're doing right now. Or we can go really, really deep and say like, these are all the changes that were made in the last 24 hours. Reporting is useful if you have some departments or some teams that are not into the interface, and you need to provide, for example, an inventory of your entire network system to your finance department, or you need to renew your licensing or your maintenance on certain equipment. So you can export a report that says, well, give me all the serial numbers of this type of or this vendor, and then work from there. And they're available on demand or scheduled. So if your finance department wants every quarter an inventory of the network, then you can just set that up to email it out, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Again, NetMRI, and my goal with NetMRI is to make you more efficient, to make you spend your time in a better way, not going through prompts and going through interfaces, just amplifying what you do right now and what you're good at. And on the same level, we have user-based view rights. So somebody who has reporting rights to see certain data can be locked out from other data. And a quick tie-in. So because we work well with our DDI solution, you can tie NetMRI in with your IPAM solution. So we have a new strategy that is coming out about our IPAM Quick Start, and it's somewhat of a container solution where we have a grid that is integrated with the cloud, with your Microsoft DNS service, and with your your services, and you sync information from NetMRI into that. So you have, if you run this with our NIA solution together, authoritative IPAM, a Microsoft management overlay, so you can manage Microsoft DNS DHCP, the sync capabilities that we talked about. You have reporting and analytics there, and cloud network automation plugin that integrates with your cloud platforms or your other orchestration tools. And then the security ecosystem integration for threat discovery, sharing, and remediation. I'm going to hop on into our demo part because that's, of course, the most interesting part of this section. So let's log into our demo appliance. And we'll start off by somewhat of the how do we get to the data. Just the usual approach I take is we first talk a bit about our network explorer. So we got to explore the network. So you enter all the data in there, and so we discover everything there is. So we discover everything in your network, and we give you a status on how we're discovering. Based on that, we build an inventory. And so an inventory is just a list or a table of what is out there, right? I mean, I have all these IPs, which are all representing devices, net infrastructure devices in my network. And so I can just say, hey, I want to know more about this device. Well, it is a router, Cisco router, and I have the following issues about it straight away. We're violating a number of policies. I have the following interfaces on it. Because it's a router, I can look at my route table. And if I want to look into my config management, I can go into my config explorer and look from there what we have. So here we see our running and our saved config and all the historical configs for a lot of pages. Now, once we have that inventory data, we can apply some intelligence. And so we apply some intelligence and we go into summaries. With summaries, we're now being smarter, right? We're seeing, okay, well, on my entire infrastructure, what routes do I have? where are these routes configured? If I have this route, well, I have an EIGRP route in here. Where has been configured? Well, this route is currently present on my firewall and on my campus 2, campus 1, and on my WAN bridge. Again, apply that intelligence. So from our inventory, we went to summaries. We can see our VLAN information and where VLANs are configured and who is using them. And then on top of that, of course, we discover neighbor data. And neighbor data is the main source of information for our topology. And so we'll spend most of our time right now here in our topology viewer. So you see our topology viewer here, which is a dynamic map of the network. This is based on the data as we have it. So it's dynamic. If I add a switch attached to this, then I will see that once it's discovered, it will pop up and it will show in my map. So our new topology maps allow you to drag and drop these around so you can structure them. And you can save whatever look and feel that you want. So for example, here we can drag and drop it. And then once we're happy with the way things look, we can actually save that view. So we start off here in our aggregate view, and we're going to do a save view, and we give it a name. So I'm going to call it here aggregate IVG2. Save that view for now. All right, so now we have this saved, and we see everything that is in here right now. Now, this is a holistic overview. This is your entire aggregate network, which might not always be relevant to you, or there might just be too much information. And so you have the ability to zoom in and zoom out on this. You can pan as you see fit. But depending on the number of nodes, we will show you as much detail as you can handle. So you might have seen, and I don't have enough end hosts in this configuration to show you that example, but let me go to my slide deck where I actually have the example listed for the discovery engine. So here in this slide, let me increase the size of this slide again. You see the model that we were looking at, but you can also see here the aggregated view. And so this is what you will have if there's a high number of end hosts or a really high number of devices. You will see this grouping take place. Now you can still zoom in, you can still look at each and every device up to this really detailed level, but it allows you to cluster and to visualize data or your network infrastructure like it. So you can filter. So we have, of course, we have our NetMRI device. NetMRI supports different topologies, different deployment modes. So right now we're working on a standalone deployment model where we have a single box. But if you have a high number of network devices, then we will do a distributed approach. Now, when we do a distributed approach, we can select here between which device has discovered which network device, other network devices. We have our data sources again. And so here we see that we have all our network devices. This is our building 1. This is our building 2. Branch 2, branch 5. Now, if I want, I can select, okay, this is my building 1 and everything that is associated to it, and building 2. So now we have selected building 1 and building 2. Okay, and so now we're going to save that view. Save that view. So if I now go to my aggregate view and then to my view, I will see that I have those nodes in there. So I have my data sources where we learn things from. I have my locations. So we will pull based on the system location. So we have everything here that has this configured. Then we have DA Puka configured on these devices. And so this highlighting is really how we bring these to the surface. And then we have one with unknown. So maybe we should modify or change anything to this. Getting a question here that says, does this topology build a lot of load to grid master, or we add to existing environment? Does the appliance need to be changed? So NetMRI runs on a dedicated appliance. It's standalone from the grid. It's not a part of the grid. If you're a DDI customer running NIOS, this is standalone. Having this in your infrastructure lives by itself. Now, if you want to do the IPAM sync, so synchronizing the data from NetMRI into your grid, then it will cause some load, but it's small. Now, talk to your SE. I mean, I can unfortunately not size infrastructure over Zoom sessions without a lot of data available. But your SE is equipped to size and to see what is needed. In most cases, you don't need to upscale your grid master to support this. Now, what does happen is that when we discover a high number of networks or end hosts, we synchronize that data, and those turn into database objects on your grid. So you need to make sure that your grid is capable of supporting what is out there. And don't be surprised. I mean, we've seen a lot of customers who deploy this, who run discovery, and all of a sudden, like, realize that their estimates on IPs in use are off by 50%. So make sure you're careful in your estimations there, and just turning stuff on. So we have our location data. We have our type data in here that we can leverage. So we can say, well, which are my firewalls? And I can see them straight away from here. And then our grouping that we manually create. So we can build these groups, and you can build them based on settings. So to quickly show you, if I go into my settings and I go into my collections and groups. So you see here these grouping and the way they're structured. And so let's look at one that is manually built. So here we see a basic routers only. So if we look at the settings for it, we're seeing that the membership criteria to be a member of this group is going to be if I'm 75% sure, and if the type is router, then I'm a member of this group. And so this is a very easy way to structure your data. So you can do that by location, you can do that by network. There's a number of variables that you can leverage here, system variables, that allow you to structure your data and create useful groups for you. And so we see that a number of SEs have been going to town in here, creating these. So those are the groups that cross-populate. We have our vendors, we have our models, and then we have our VLANs, which is interesting because we can have like a VLAN overview here, or an overlay as to where is a VLAN present. Well, all of this is currently strictly to one device. But if they would be spanning links, then we would show that data in there as well. We can actually see where it is configured and where it is. Now, an interesting feature is we have the ability to edit this. So we currently have our infrastructure here, and we have our infrastructure over here. And what, like, how could this be an island? Well, for example, one way of creating these islands is when you are running remote sites over MPLS, they will show up as being somewhere out there. Now, if they're somewhere out there, there's two ways. You can either pay your provider to get SNMP access to their infrastructure, or you might not even get that, or you can just edit the graph. And so you can edit, and you can say add a node. I'm going to add a node here, and it's, well, this ID, and we're going to call it the missing node 1. Vendor, let's say that our network is provided by AT&T. And we're going to save. And so now we have that node sitting there, and I can now add an edge. I can say, well, this branch is connected to this node. Save. And this node is connected to here. And save. And so now we've added that context that before we did not have. So even if you don't have that visibility, you can save that information, apply it, and have things make sense. So that's one big part of it. You also have the ability to search in here. You can search by IP, by name. So if I look for Campus 1, I mean, it's going to bring up Campus 1 and everything that's connected to it, and pop it out. Freeze layout is the ability between making modifications to this and how it moves around. Of course, we can refresh this as we see the need. But I think an interesting aspect to the topology wizard is the ability to do mouse overs and gain information from that straight away. So I mouse over and I get straight away that this is the link between these two switches on these interfaces with these interface descriptions. It's really hard to get that out of any of the other existing tools. So, and we have that same information for the mouse over with a device, right? You can see straight away, this is this device, it has this many issues, violating this many policies. So the topology viewer really can help you with these aspects. Now, you can also right-click a device, and that opens up a new menu. So we have the device viewer, so it does the device information, the config explorer, the running config, any changes on it. I mean, this is part of the other UI links. It can show you which end hosts are connected to it, but you can say, hey, what is my layer 2 N hop from here? Like if I take three hops from this device, where do I go? Okay, so from here, I have this and I have that. That is all that is connected on the layer 2 stack for this, or in a 2-hop ratio. Some questions I got here is, does NetMRI has Netflow collector? So we don't gather Netflow information. It's a popular question. So right now we gather the configuration, we gather SNMP data, and we gather some performance data, but we don't gather actual Netflow information. But yeah, if this is a requirement for you in your NCCM tool, I would gladly talk to you on how you plan to leverage that or how you want to use it, because it's definitely on my radar. Does NetMRI provide VoIP or QoS reporting? So yes, if the data is available, we can extract it. If it's available as SNMP, it's very straightforward. If it's available through the config or through the CLI, we can get to it and we can use it in different fields. So yes, that data is available. We have a couple of customers that also use NetMRI for QoS configuration enforcement. So that the QoS statements are defined on every interface where they should be defined. So that's what a policy engine can frequently be used for. Some other features that are in here under the right menu are going to be the layer 3 NHOP, which is similar to the layer N2 NHOP. But very interesting here is layer 2, layer 3 most likely path. So I can go in here and I can right click this switch and I can say I want the most likely path to, and let's look for that switch in the Puka location. So now we're going to go from that switch to that switch. We say OK. And we see now on our diagram that in order to get from one side to the other, we actually would take the most likely route is through these links. So over this device, through this device, over this link. I think that can be very useful information to troubleshoot anything. It can be absolutely valuable information there. I'm getting a question here that says, hi, can I ask you how to view path analysis? Do you mean the reason what's behind path analysis, or I mean, yeah, if you could clarify that question, that would be helpful. But the path analysis or what we use is based on the neighboring data. So again, that's why it's most likely path, right? It might be that you overrule certain aspects or that you hard code, but we give you at least an approximation or that information. Asymmetrical paths, no, it can, but it will give you a one-way approach. If you would have an asymmetrical path from here to here, let's say that takes you over this switch router first on that way, and then on the other way, then using the tool from one way will give you a different result if you do from here to here versus from there to there. But again, it's not it's smart, but it's not like we'll say next level smart. Um, we're not gonna review your exact routing statements and deduce all the information from there. Unfortunately, that is yeah, a hard problem to solve. But any more questions, I'm happy to field them. We have the export option, and so you can export these diagrams into an SVG file, which you can then import into Visio. So I ask a lot of my customers when showing this is who here maintains a video about their network topology, and most people do, or some form of diagram. I mean, Visio has been on a decline. But how many out of you can guarantee that that Visio or that diagram you have is in sync with reality? I think that's frequently a problem where you make changes, you add devices, and yeah, we need to update the diagram, and yeah, we will do all that information in there, but that is not always an option. So having that data in an easy consumable web format, I think is really valuable. Having the ability to take actions from here, right? I mean, I can go here and I can say execute command. And I can now say, well, okay, Control T, right, erase, reload, and there, my config is gone. If I go next, 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 I'm now done with this router. So it's straightly available from here, and it gives you a lot of power at your fingertips. Again, NetMRI as a force multiplier. There are some settings, and I have some enabled here by default. So which VLAN do you want to trace by default? How do you want to draw your lines? Which color do you want them to be? I'm not an admin on this system, but as an admin, you can govern how many nodes you are displaying by default. So at which level that summarization will happen. So the amoeba version of the diagram, as we were looking at before. How do we want the UI to render certain things? We want to be straight lines, rounded lines. That's up to your style. And then if you want to show the policies, issues, or changes, and that's what the icons next to my devices represent. So I have my icons here that show you what state a device currently is in. So here we see, for example, that we have 2 issues, which is why, and 1 info, and 1 warning, which is why it's in that yellow state. Can it highlight spanning tree topologies similar to what you show with VLAN? Yes, and we will even tell you what the root bridge is in your VLAN. So this happened a lot of times where we implement NetMRI, and we take a look at this data, and all of a sudden people will like, hey, that switch should not be my root bridge. Let's quickly go fix that. So this will bring to the surface a lot of data that you otherwise would have to go looking for. I think that's one of the biggest aspects to NetMRI. It's like having all that data accessible. If you're managing your network, yes, you know what you're doing. I mean, it's your job to understand what you're running and where things are. But a lot of times you're so driven by everything that is changing or everything that has to happen, that it's impossible for you to look deeper or to look further where you should be working, right? You're rolling out changes all day, every day, but under the covers there might be stuff going wrong that you're not aware of, and this is something that NetMRI will highlight, that will bring out to you. Devices that are not supposed to be on the network anymore, versions that are not supposed to be in there anymore. So all that information is available right now, and it's much more practical for you. One good way to demonstrate that would be, for example, if you say, well, where did I see my last changes? If I have from this device to that device, my path, and we only made changes on this device, then where do you think the issue is going to start from? So that's what we can do. I maybe want to show you some of that where we go to our config explorer for this device. And so for this device, we can say, well, this is running, and this was our previous running config. And so we want to know the differences. And so we go from here and we say compare. And apparently the change was that somebody added an SNMP string. So again, these are all very simple examples, but I guess if you apply it to what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, you will definitely understand. So you can compare. You can also, this is sometimes overlooked. This is our running config. This is our saved config. This is our previous running config. I can select this and I can say rollback, and it will push that previous configuration to that device. That's really valuable if you say like, well, somebody made a change. We don't want to use it anymore. Okay, let me switch this around and go back to the topology viewer. So yeah, I mean, happy to field any questions if somebody has. I'm currently, sorry, let me read out the question. I'm currently an MRI user, but have let my support lapse. I would like to talk to you about features versus what's up and possible reasons to renew. Awesome. I mean, if you know who your current SE is, then I'm sure they will set up a call with you. If not, then I'm happy to have a look and see who that is. The problem with having your support lapse means that you cannot upgrade anymore. Now, there's a workaround to that. You can always get a eval going of the current version as a virtual machine. So you can just quickly spin it up, take it out for a spin, and see what the new version looks like. New changes that we have added, I don't cover too much of it, but we've added, for example, if you're coming from an older version, support for wireless. So we can tell you where a client is based on like their SSID, which AP they're connected to. We've added support for a Cisco ACI, native support for Cisco ACI. Yeah, the bunch of performance improvements. So I'm sure that your SE will take the time to go over the last changes for the last few years. But yeah, the product is really booming. Now, we quickly touched on the PCERT data, so I'm just going to switch over into some of that where we show you under network analysis the issues that are currently ongoing. And so because of the subscription we have, and so that subscription takes all the PCERT data that gets published and parses that and creates a feed out of it, we can see that, well, this critical vulnerability, currently we have 30 devices that are affected and 1 new device that is affected. And so we click on it, it opens up the issue viewer. And it tells us that, well, these devices are currently vulnerable or impacted by that PCERT. If we look at the description, we say, oh, well, this is an authorization bypass CVE. So now how do you fix it? Well, you fix it by going to a version that is not available, or that is not available, that is available, so you upgrade it. Now, how do you upgrade? Well, let's go to config management, job management, and do a search for upgrade. And so here we have our iOS switch upgrade or iOS image upgrade example script. And so this is quite a convoluted script. Now let's go instead of edit to run now. And so how do we want to drop that upgrade file on an appliance or on a network device? Where's the file located? What image do we want to use? What's the MD5? All that information. Do we want to download only, clean, flash? What would you do on reload? And do we want to run it in a debug mode, or do we actually want to enable the changes? So we take this script, you fill out the parameters, any change record, and then you say, well, where do I want to run this? Well, do I want to run this on all my Cisco gear, or do I want to find that specific device where I want to run this. So we add the device in here. We go next, 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 and the script will kick off a fully automated upgrade. This is a quick example script. You can write your own. You can take it and modify it to any way you see fit. So yeah, Gary, if you're on 631, absolutely get an eval going or talk to your SE to cover the entire list of changes we have made. It's definitely significant coming from such a version. So that is how things are integrated with each other, how they work together. So I think we covered a lot of ground, right? We have a lot of features in here. It's really a packed product that can make you more efficient. So any questions, any remarks, I'm happy to field those. Yeah, just let me know what you want to know or where you want to use NetMRI. If you want to speak up, I think I can unmute people as well. Let me see if I can see that. Attendees. Yeah, just put in a quick ping to let me know if you want to be unmuted or if you want to discuss something. If not, we will follow up with the presentation that I used so you have something to refer to. Question, how is it licensed per device, site, or enterprise? Well, I can give you a really nice scoop there. So the main licensing is done per device. So you need of course the infrastructure to run it, and so you can run NetMRI on physical appliances or virtual. How is it licensed? It's licensed based on the number of devices in your infrastructure. So we have the concept of a licensed device. Let's maybe show you under the Network Explorer how that looks for, or how that looks like. So we see here at the bottom that we have discovered this many. We have classified, reached, identified. We have 61 network devices, and we have 46 licensed network devices in this infrastructure. And so a licensed device is a device that we can talk to, that we can work with. And so that's the main benchmark for licensing. Now, the scoop that I want to give you is we are launching subscription-based licensing for NetMRI. So now, instead of buying upfront a huge cost, you can now buy a one-year license for a device group. So 100 devices for 1 year. And we have a real nice incentive, because if you buy a subscription license for a number of devices, then we give you the right to run the VM for free. So normally there's a cost associated with the VM, a licensing cost. And so we're waiving that cost for you if you go with the subscription route for your devices. If you choose to go perpetual, you'll still have to pay it. If you want to go physical, well, you need to buy a box, and those boxes need to be purchased. But if you want to go purely virtual, then we'll throw in the licensing for your VM. Check out the community@infoblox.com. You will see there all the discussions going on between people that are using the product. There are technical advisory boards if you are an existing customer that you can become a member of. You can find best practices, and you can see there the ability to learn everything about the product that you can hope for to learn. Thank you all for your time, and I wish you a pleasant rest of your day.